where do you begin? And I don't begin as an artist, no. I'm actually here as a problem solver to deal with the experience of life, of whatever the meaning is. You start off with experience and satisfaction of the human spirit and desires. That's where I think it all begins. I never start from the outside inwards. I always start with the experience of people. The light, the views, the form of space itself. Starting with the notion of the human experience really is the key to the whole thing. Through the process of making life within whatever structure you're creating, that's where the poetry comes. You cannot be an architect unless you really understand the form of space. So that means you can imagine it. Drawing was for me really important. I started to learn how to make diagrams, and I got a lot of that from the Team 10 people. And I have a methodology which I call narrative mapping. There are many ideas in any design that you have to answer. That's where my diagrams come in, that I'm layering the ideas very explicitly, because architecture has enormous complexity to it and you can't simplify it. These narrative maps are really the collection of these ideas that are fundamental to every project. Through the process of this layering, a form is arisen, but it never starts with the form backwards. I grew up in Cape Town, and what was important there was the landscape. The plant material, the trees, the botanical gardens. That was my entry to architecture. Visual beauty of the place, and a real respect for landscape. There's a lot of indoor-outdoor relationship, and I've never dropped the idea that building and landscape have a wonderful reciprocity. You can't possibly be working wherever you are without understanding the larger framework that actually you're part of. There's a word I use quite a lot, which is appropriate, because every context you have to understand. I've been living in a place like Cape Town during my youth. You're always aware of the apartheid. When you're getting into planning, you're absolutely beholden to the context that is political. Housing is much more than the obvious. It can play different kinds of roles. The fact that housing is a noun and it's also a verb just puts the complexity of the word itself in place. Without decent shelter, I don't believe you can actually have a successful community. I went back to Cape Town to deal with my parents' house. Dear Aldo van Eyck, who had been one of my teachers, he had a wonderful metaphor. He said, the structure of a leaf is the same structure as a tree. It's like the house is to the city. And I started from day one as a young architect, being a teacher and a practitioner. School actually is where students have to deal with the realities of life, where there is politics involved in absolutely everything. What I did actually at MIT was work with communities that invited us to come and help them solve the problems. Everybody who's poor has to be able to earn a living, something that they could do collectively as a family. And so we designed a live-work community. So that became our prototype. And we did it actually in Brazil, we did it in Guyana, we did it in Peru, we did it in Kigali. At the very basis, we are actually a profession that has a responsibility to come up with solutions that are appropriate to the context, to the problem. I think people have to take the whole argument. The process leads to some levels of complexity that also leads to really good experiences.